I stared at Martha's text. Not enough space for Christmas dinner this year. Ironic, coming from my mother-in-law who'd been paying barely $950 a month for the Victorian I now owned. An unexpected inheritance from Uncle Howard had made me landlord to my in-laws, disrupting Martha's 30-year reign over family traditions. As she schemed to maintain control, spreading lies, manipulating Ryan, running a secret Airbnb from the basement, I collected evidence of her deception. When January first arrived, I slipped a note with the new lease. Space in my heart is limited too. Sometimes the perfect revenge is simply enforcing the rules. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. I never expected the phone call that would change everything. Ms. Alana Brooks? This is Thomas Wilson from Wilson & Associates law firm. The voice on the other end said, I'm calling regarding your Uncle Howard's estate. Uncle Howard, a man I barely knew, my mother's eccentric brother who drifted away from the family years ago. I hadn't seen him since I was a teenager. I'm sorry, but is he? I stammered. Yes, I'm afraid Mr. Howard passed away 3 weeks ago. Heart attack. Quite sudden. Mr. Wilson cleared his throat. The reason I'm calling is that you've been named as the primary beneficiary of his estate. I nearly dropped the phone. What? There must be some mistake. We weren't close. No mistake, Ms. Brooks. Your uncle was quite specific. He mentioned in his letter that while you weren't close in recent years, he always admired how you forged your own path. He felt you shared his independent spirit. 2 days later, I sat in Mr. Wilson's office staring at documents that made no sense. Uncle Howard, the relative nobody talked about, had apparently built a small real estate empire over the decades. And now it was mine. 7 properties in total, Mr. Wilson explained, spreading out photos across his mahogany desk. 5 apartment units downtown, a small commercial property, and this Victorian home in Oakwood Heights. When he showed me the photo of the Victorian, my heart stopped. Wait, this house. I know this house. I picked up the photo with trembling hands. My in-laws live here. Mr. Wilson looked startled. The Walkers? They've been tenants for 15 years. My mind reeled. Martha and Gerald Walker. Yes, they're my husband's parents. I left the law office in a daze, clutching a thick folder of property documents. The coincidence seemed impossible. Of all the houses in the city, my estranged uncle owned the one where my in-laws lived? I called Ryan immediately. You're not going to believe this, I said when he answered. After explaining everything, there was a long silence on the other end. So you're saying, you own my parents' house now? Ryan finally said, his voice strained. Apparently. And that's not all. According to these papers, they've been paying well below market rate for years. Way below. That night, Ryan and I spread the documents across our small dining table in the cramped one-bedroom apartment we'd been stuck in for 3 years. Ever since I lost my job at Collins Advertising during the big downsizing, we'd been struggling. The apartment that once felt cozy now felt suffocating, especially with our dreams of starting a family on indefinite hold. Look at this, I said, pointing to the lease agreement. They're paying $950 a month for a 4-bedroom Victorian in Oakwood Heights. Current market value would be at least $2,400. Ryan ran his fingers through his dark hair, a habit when he's stressed. Uncle Howard must have really liked them. They renew every January 1st, I noted. That's coming up in just over a month. Ryan paced our small living room, his tall frame making the space feel even smaller. So, what are you thinking? I chose my words carefully. I think we need to be fair. To them and to ourselves. Meaning, we keep them as tenants, of course. It's their home. But maybe we adjust the rent to something more reasonable? Not $2,400, but not $950 either. And still give them a family discount. Ryan stopped pacing. I don't know, Alana. My mom is very particular about the house. She's been talking about redoing the kitchen for years, but says Uncle Howard, I guess we know him now, never approved the renovations. I took a deep breath. Well, things are different now. We need to talk to them. We invited Martha and Gerald over for dinner the following weekend. I spent all day cooking, trying to make our modest apartment as welcoming as possible. Martha arrived in her pearl necklace and cashmere sweater, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed even at 65. Gerald followed behind, quieter as always, with a bottle of wine. "It's so cozy in here," Martha said, looking around our apartment with thinly veiled judgment. "I don't know how you manage in such a small space. We've always preferred proper houses with room to breathe." I bit my tongue and smiled. Dinner's almost ready. Throughout the meal, Martha dominated the conversation, talking about the latest country club gossip and the Christmas dinner she was already planning. Gerald mostly nodded and occasionally glanced at me apologetically. "Actually, we have some news to share," I finally said when there was a pause. Ryan squeezed my hand under the table. "Oh." Martha set down her fork. "Are you finally pregnant?" "About time, I'd say." "No, not that," I said quickly. "It's about the house you're living in." Martha frowned. "What about it? Has that old miser Howard finally agreed to the kitchen renovation? The appliances are practically antiques." "Not exactly." I looked at Ryan, who nodded for me to continue. "My Uncle Howard passed away recently." "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss, dear," Martha said automatically, though I noticed her eyes didn't match the sentiment. "Thank you. But here's the thing. He left his properties to me, including your house." The silence that followed was deafening. Martha's face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, calculation, before settling into something unreadable. Gerald simply looked surprised. "You," Martha finally said. "He left the house to you?" I nodded. "All his properties, actually. 7 in total." "Well," Martha said, her voice tight. "Isn't that fortunate for you?" "We wanted to talk to you about the lease," Ryan interjected. "It's up for renewal on January 1st. Are you evicting us?" Martha's hand flew to her pearl necklace. No, of course not," I said quickly. "We would never do that. But we do need to discuss adjusting the rent somewhat. You've been paying well below market value." Howard understood our situation, Martha snapped. "We had an understanding. We're not looking to charge full market rate," Ryan assured her. "But given our financial situation, we do need to make some adjustments." After much discussion, most of it tense, they reluctantly agreed to a modest increase to $1,500 per month, still well below market rate. But Martha had conditions. "I want that kitchen updated," she insisted. "New appliances, granite countertops, the works. Since you're the landlord now, that's your responsibility." I was about to object when Ryan gave me a pleading look. "We'll look into it," I conceded. As they were leaving, Martha turned back with a forced smile. "Oh, and you'll come for Christmas dinner, of course. It's our 30th year hosting in our home. The whole family will be there." "Our home, not your property." The message was clear. After they left, I sank onto the couch. Did you notice how she reacted? Not a word of congratulations, just immediately worried about herself. Ryan sighed. "She's just in shock. It's a lot to process." "I don't know. Something feels off. Like she's already plotting something." "You're being paranoid," Ryan said, kissing the top of my head. "It'll be fine." But as I cleaned up dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that this inheritance was about to test our marriage in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The Victorian house looked even more impressive in person than in the photos. 3 stories of vintage charm with ornate trim, bay windows, and a wide front porch. As Ryan and I approached for our official inspection the following weekend, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of awe and unease. This beautiful home was mine now, at least on paper. Martha answered the door before we could knock, wearing an apron despite no evidence of actual cooking. "Right on time," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Come in." The interior was impeccably decorated, every surface gleaming, every throw pillow perfectly positioned. It looked like a house from a magazine, not a home where people actually lived. "We'll need to check everything," I explained. "Just routine inspection stuff." "Of course," Martha said, following close behind as we moved from room to room. The baseboard heating in the guest room makes an awful rattling noise, and the master bathroom faucet drips constantly. For every minor issue she pointed out, she added a comment about how poor Howard never got around to fixing it properly. Meanwhile, Gerald had disappeared, only to re-emerge as we were checking the upstairs. "Alana," he called softly. "Could I show you something?" In the hallway, Gerald had opened a photo album. "Thought you might like to see some of the history of the house and the family." The album was filled with photos of Ryan growing up in this very home. His first day of school on those front steps. Birthday parties in the backyard. Christmas mornings in front of the fireplace that we'd just inspected. 30 years of memories in this house, Gerald said quietly. "Martha's particularly proud of our Christmas traditions." I felt a pang of guilt, even though I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. "It's a beautiful home, Gerald. I can see why you love it so much." As Ryan continued the inspection in another room, Gerald lowered his voice further. "There's something you should understand about Martha. Christmas, this house, it means more to her than you might realize." "What do you mean?" Gerald glanced around to make sure Martha wasn't nearby. "Martha grew up poor. Really poor. Her family moved constantly, always one step ahead of eviction notices. By the time she was 18, she'd lived in 14 different places. I hadn't known this about my mother-in-law. Ryan had never mentioned it. When we bought our first Christmas tree as newlyweds," Gerald continued, "she cried for an hour. Said it was the first real Christmas she'd ever had. When we moved into this house, she vowed our children would never know that kind of instability." "I'm not trying to take that away," I said softly. "I know." Gerald closed the album. "Just try to understand. This house, these traditions, they represent security to her. Something she never had growing up." Before I could respond, Martha appeared in the doorway. "Gerald, are you boring Alana with old photos? I'm sure she has more important things to do." The rest of the inspection was tense. By the time we left, I felt emotionally drained. In the car, Ryan was unusually quiet. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Maybe we should wait until after the holidays for the rent increase," he said finally. "It's only a few more weeks." "Ryan, we talked about this. We need that money. I haven't found a new job yet, and we're barely making ends meet." I know. It's just you saw all those photos. That house means a lot to my family. It means a lot to our future, too," I reminded him. "Your mom will adjust." But Martha had no intention of adjusting quietly. Over the next few weeks, she called Ryan constantly, always when I wasn't around. I'd come home to find him looking guilty, quickly ending calls when I walked in. "Mom was just reminiscing about Christmases past," he'd say vaguely. Or, "Mom wanted my opinion on the menu for Christmas dinner." But I knew what she was doing. Slowly working on him, playing the nostalgia card, making him feel guilty about our decision. I decided I needed an ally. Ryan's sister Eliza was my best option. We'd always gotten along well, and I hoped she might see through her mother's manipulations. I invited her for coffee at a cafe downtown. Eliza arrived looking harried, her blonde hair, so like her mother's, pulled back in a messy ponytail. At 32, she was 3 years younger than Ryan but seemed perpetually stressed. "Thanks for meeting me," I said. "I wanted to talk about the situation with your parents' house." Eliza stirred her latte nervously. "It's kind of weird, isn't it? You being their landlord now." "It's definitely awkward. But I'm trying to be fair. The rent increase is still well below market value." "Mom's pretty upset about it," Eliza said, not meeting my eyes. "I gathered that. Has she said something to you?" Eliza bit her lip. "It's complicated. You know I love you, Alana, but what? I don't think you understand what that house means to Mom. And honestly, I kind of depend on them too." "What do you mean?" Eliza looked embarrassed. "They help me out financially sometimes. A lot, actually. Since my divorce, things have been tight. If they have to pay more rent." I realized then that Martha's web of control extended further than I'd thought. She had Eliza financially dependent on her, which explained why she'd never moved far from home or stood up to her mother. "I see," was all I could say. The following week, I was shopping in Oakwood Heights when I decided to stop by the local bakery. As I approached, I saw Martha inside, talking with three other well-dressed women. I paused outside, not wanting to interrupt. "Absolutely ridiculous," Martha was saying. She barely knew Howard, and now suddenly she's lording it over us like some kind of property tycoon. "After all you've done for her," one of the women clucked sympathetically. "She got lucky with an inheritance, and now she's power-tripping," Martha continued. "Ryan's too nice to stand up to her. She's always been difficult, but this is beyond the pale." I backed away from the door, my face burning. The baker had seen me. I recognized her as Donna, who had catered Ryan's surprise birthday party last year. The look of discomfort on her face told me she knew exactly who Martha was talking about. Thanksgiving arrived with a cold snap. As we pulled up to the house, I steeled myself for an uncomfortable evening. Martha had invited the extended family, Ryan's Uncle Bill and Aunt Susan, their 3 adult children and spouses, and Eliza. 14 people in total. Throughout dinner, Martha found ways to emphasize her ownership of the house and traditions. "We've hosted Thanksgiving in our family home for 28 years now," she announced as she carried in the turkey. "Remember when we redid the dining room, Martha?"
Susan asked.
"Must have been 15 years ago now." "Yes, and we're planning more renovations soon," Martha replied, glancing pointedly at me. "Now that we have a new landlord, perhaps we'll finally get that kitchen I've been wanting." After dinner, while everyone was digesting in the living room, Martha clinked her glass. "Since we're all together, I wanted to discuss something important." My stomach clenched. "As you know, our Christmas tradition is very special. For 30 years, we've hosted Christmas in this house. It's where our family comes together." Murmurs of agreement around the room. "I think it's important that we maintain these traditions, don't you? This house has been our family gathering place for so long. It would be devastating if anything changed that." Everyone was nodding, and several people glanced at me. I realized with horror that Martha had orchestrated this entire conversation to put public pressure on us, without directly addressing the ownership change. On the drive home, I couldn't contain my anger any longer. Did you see what she did in there? She was marking her territory, making sure everyone saw this as their house and their traditions. Ryan gripped the steering wheel tightly. "She's just proud of what she's built. She's manipulating you and everyone else. She didn't once acknowledge that we own the house now. It's still their home, Milana. They've lived there for decades. As renters. Renters who've been getting a massive discount all these years." The tension between us continued to build. In early December, Martha began calling daily about Christmas dinner preparations. "I've assigned you the cranberry sauce and dinner rolls," she informed me during one call. Nothing too complicated. Meanwhile, she detailed the elaborate menu she was planning: a standing rib roast, oyster stuffing, individual chocolate soufflés. All in her kitchen that she was planning to renovate. "I'm thinking white cabinets with a marble backsplash," she mused. "Once we redo the kitchen, it will completely transform the heart of our home." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. The breaking point came mid-December. Ryan came home from work, looking troubled. "I've been thinking," he said hesitantly. "Maybe we should consider selling the house to my parents." I stared at him in disbelief.
"What?"
"At a discount, of course. But it would solve everything. They could stay in their home, we'd get some money, and all this tension would be over." "Are you serious right now?" I felt like I'd been punched. "Your mother has been working on you for weeks, and you're just giving in?" "I'm trying to keep the peace." "No, you're choosing your mother over your wife. That house is our financial future, Ryan. It could help us start a family, move out of this tiny apartment. All the things we've been dreaming of." "It's just a house," he argued. "It's not just a house to your mother, so why should it be just a house to us?"
"This is about respect, Ryan."
"Your mother doesn't respect me, or us, or our marriage. And apparently, neither do you." It was our first real fight in years, and it ended with Ryan sleeping on the couch. 2 days after our fight, I was still seething. Ryan and I had reached an uneasy truce, but things remained tense. I was in the middle of a job application when my phone buzzed with a text from Martha. Dear Alana, due to space limitations and family considerations, we need to adjust our Christmas dinner plans. We'll be hosting Ryan's cousins from Europe, and unfortunately, we won't be able to accommodate everyone. I'm heartbroken, but difficult choices must be made. Martha. I read the message 3 times, unable to believe what I was seeing. They were uninviting us, from Christmas dinner? In our house? When Ryan got home, I showed him the text. His brow furrowed as he read it. This can't be right. There must be some misunderstanding. He immediately called his mother, putting the phone on speaker. Mom, what's this about uninviting us for Christmas dinner? Oh, Ryan. Martha's voice dripped with false sadness. I'm absolutely heartbroken about it. But you know your cousins Emma and Daniel are coming from London with their children. That's 4 extra people, and the dining room just won't accommodate everyone. Mom, you've had 20 people for dinner before. Well, yes, but... Her voice shifted slightly. It's just that with everything being so complicated this year, I had to make some difficult choices. What does that mean? Ryan demanded. I think you know, dear. There's been so much tension. And really, it's my house, my tradition. I have the right to decide who comes. I watched Ryan's face as the reality sank in. His mother was explicitly excluding his wife from a family celebration in a house we owned. We'll talk about this later, he said tightly and hung up. I can't believe she would do this, he said, looking stunned. But I was already grabbing my coat. Where are you going? He asked.
For a drive.
I need to think. I found myself driving toward Oakwood Heights, toward the Victorian. Sure enough, despite it being 2 weeks before Christmas, the house was already elaborately decorated. A professional crew was installing twinkling lights along the roofline. Oversized wreaths hung on every window. This wasn't the work of someone concerned about space limitations. This was someone planning a showcase. Back home, I did something I'd never done before. As part of the rental agreement transfer, I had access to their payment information to verify they could make rent. I checked their recent credit card statements. The evidence was damning. Martha had spent over $3,000 on Christmas decorations, $2,500 on catering, $900 on new dining chairs, plus dozens of smaller purchases, specialty linens, crystal stemware, imported cheese. Curious, I started checking her social media activity. There it was. Martha had been planning a Christmas showcase for months. She'd even invited Samantha Reed, a local lifestyle blogger with 50,000 followers, to feature their home in a traditional family Christmas spread. There was no mention of space limitations. In fact, she'd specifically mentioned our extended family of 23 gathering for our 30th Christmas in our beloved historic home. I was assembling screenshots when my phone rang. It was Eliza, sobbing. I'm so sorry, Alana, she cried. Mom told everyone that you're refusing to come to Christmas dinner because you're trying to make some kind of power play about the house. She said you're trying to ruin the family traditions out of spite. That's completely false, I gasped. She uninvited us. I know. I saw the group text she sent, but then she told Dad and me something different. She's told everyone not to discuss it with you. After Eliza's call, I gathered everything. The screenshots, the credit card statements, the guest list I'd found online that clearly included 23 names with room for more. She'd even ordered a custom place card for the blogger, but none for Ryan or me. When Ryan got home from his evening run, I laid it all out. Look at this, I said, showing him the evidence. Your mother has been planning this for months. There's no space issue. She's excluding us because she wants to pretend the house is still hers. Ryan sat heavily on the couch, staring at the evidence. I can't believe she would lie like this. This isn't just about Christmas dinner, I said gently. It's about control. Your mother is trying to maintain control of the house, of the family narrative, and of you. For the first time, I saw real anger in Ryan's eyes. Let's call her right now. He put the phone on speaker again. Ryan, sweetie, I was just thinking about you, Martha answered warmly. Mom, we need to talk about Christmas dinner. And please put Dad on speaker too. There was a pause. Gerald's watching TV, He doesn't need to. Put him on speaker, Mom. Another pause, then Gerald's distant hello? We know what you're doing, Ryan said flatly. We've seen the guest list. We've seen the receipts for 23 place settings. We've seen the social media posts about your extended family gathering. Martha's tone changed instantly. You've been snooping through my personal information? How dare you? Actually, as your landlord, I have the right to verify your financial situation, I interjected. It's in the lease agreement. You're spying on us now? Martha's voice rose dramatically. After 30 years of creating beautiful family traditions, this is how I'm treated? Like a criminal? Mom, stop playing the victim, Ryan said firmly. You deliberately uninvited us from Christmas dinner in our own house and then lied about the reason. Your own house? Martha's voice turned cold. This has never been your house, Ryan. This is my home. I've built every tradition, designed every room, created every memory here. That paper your wife is waving around doesn't change 30 years of history. Mom. No, you listen to me. That house should have gone to you, not her. Howard was your godfather. He watched you grow up in this house. If anyone should have inherited it, it should have been you, not some outsider who married into the family 5 minutes ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Is that what this is about? Ryan finally asked. You think Alana doesn't deserve the inheritance? I think, Martha said icily, that you need to decide where your loyalties lie. With the family that raised you, or with that woman you married. That woman is my wife, Ryan said, his voice shaking with anger. Then you have a choice to make, don't you? Martha's voice was eerily calm now. Either you convince her to sign the house over to us, at a reasonable price, of course, or you can forget about being part of this family's traditions. You can't have both. Gerald's voice broke in. Martha, that's going too. Shut up, Gerald, she snapped, and the line went dead. Ryan and I sat in stunned silence. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. Ryan, I said finally, I need to know where you stand. He looked at me, his expression resolute. With you. I stand with you. What my mother just did, I've never heard her like that before. It's like she took off a mask. I took his hand. This isn't just about Christmas dinner. It's not even just about the house anymore. Your mother is trying to force you to choose between me and her. That's not love. That's control. Ryan nodded slowly. I think I need to talk to someone about this. A therapist, maybe. I've spent my whole life making excuses for her behavior, and now I'm seeing it clearly for the first time. I squeezed his hand. Whatever happens next, we face it together. As we sat in our small apartment that night, I realized the inheritance had exposed fault lines in our family that had been there all along, hidden beneath the surface of Martha's perfectly orchestrated family gatherings. The masks had fallen away, and there would be no going back. After Martha's ultimatum, Ryan and I spent a restless night discussing our options. The next morning, with dark circles under our eyes but renewed determination, we called Thomas Wilson, my uncle's lawyer. I'm not surprised, Thomas said after I explained our situation. Your Uncle Howard mentioned that Martha Walker could be difficult. It's partly why he kept the ownership arrangement quiet all these years. What are our rights here? I asked. The lease renewal is coming up on January 1st. The current lease must be honored until its expiration, Thomas explained. But after January 1st, you have full rights to modify the terms or terminate the arrangement altogether, with proper notice, of course. We don't want to evict them, Ryan clarified quickly. We just want a fair arrangement and some respect. Thomas nodded. I understand. Let me review the paperwork and get back to you with some options. As we left his office, Ryan seemed lost in thought. I'm going to find a therapist, he said suddenly. I need to understand why I've been letting my mother manipulate me all these years. Within a week, Ryan had his first therapy session with Dr. Bennett. He came home looking emotionally drained but somehow lighter. Dr. Bennett helped me see some patterns, he told me, collapsing onto our couch. She asked about my childhood, and I started remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. Like what? Like how Mom would give me the silent treatment whenever I didn't do exactly what she wanted. Or how she'd compare me to my cousins when I disappointed her. Ryan rubbed his face. She'd tell me I was breaking her heart when I wanted to go to college out of state. I ended up staying local because I couldn't handle her tears. That's manipulation, Ryan. I know that now. But growing up, it just seemed like love. Like she cared so much she couldn't bear to be separated from me. He looked at me with sad eyes. Dr. Bennett says I've been conditioned to prioritize my mother's emotional needs above my own. And now, above ours. I sat beside him and took his hand. How do you feel about that? Angry.
Sut.
Confused. He squeezed my hand, but mostly determined not to let it continue. Over the next few days, we immersed ourselves in reviewing all the property documents. While examining the basement rental policies, we discovered something unexpected. Ryan, look at this. I called him over to my laptop. According to their lease, any subletting requires written permission from the landlord. So look at this. I switched to a browser tab showing a vacation rental site. There it was, the basement of the Victorian, listed as a charming garden-level suite in historic home. The listing showed it had been active for over 3 years, with dozens of reviews. They've been running an Airbnb out of the basement. Ryan looked shocked. Without permission? Looks like it. And based on these rates and occupancy, they've been making about $1,800 a month from it. Ryan ran his hands through his hair. So they're paying $950 in rent, but making $1,800 from an unauthorized sublet?
Exactly.
And I bet that money is going straight into your mother's entertainment budget. Our discovery confirmed what we'd suspected. Martha wasn't just manipulative. She was dishonest. But before we could decide how to address it, the family freeze-out began in earnest. Ryan's calls to family members went unanswered. His childhood friend Jason, whose family had always spent Christmas Eve with the Walkers, awkwardly avoided us at the grocery store. Even Eliza stopped responding to texts after her tearful call. It's like I've been excommunicated, Ryan said bitterly after another ignored call to his cousin Beth. Mom's turned everyone against us. The silence was deafening as Christmas approached. No invitations, no updates, not even holiday cards from family members who'd never missed a year before. On Christmas Eve, after a quiet dinner at home, Ryan looked so dejected that I suggested a drive. Let's just pass by the house. See what's happening, I offered. We drove slowly down the street, stopping a few houses away. The Victorian was lit up like a Christmas wonderland, every window glowing, every inch decorated. At least 15 cars lined the street. So much for space limitations, Ryan murmured. When we got home, Ryan scrolled through social media and found fresh photos from Martha's account. There was the whole family gathered around the dining table, Jason's family, Eliza, the cousins from Europe, Aunt Susan, and Uncle Bill, even Ryan's elderly grandmother, who rarely left her nursing home. She got Grandma Rose to come? Ryan's voice cracked. She hasn't attended Christmas dinner in 5 years. But what hurt him most was the family photo by the fireplace. Everyone was there, including a man standing in what had always been Ryan's spot, a distant cousin's husband who shared Ryan's height and dark hair. From a distance or at a glance, the family portrait looked complete. Ryan had been literally replaced. We went to bed early that night, too heartbroken to maintain our forced Christmas cheer. The next morning, we exchanged quiet gifts and tried to make the best of our first Christmas alone. Around noon, there was a knock at our door. Ryan opened it to find his father standing there, holding several covered dishes.
Dad.
Ryan looked stunned. Gerald glanced nervously over his shoulder as if afraid of being seen. I brought you some food. Turkey, stuffing, Martha's cranberry sauce, all the fixings. I invited him in, and he set the food on our kitchen counter, then stood awkwardly, fidgeting with his car keys. Your mother doesn't know I'm here, he admitted. She thinks I'm picking up her sister from the airport. Why are you here, Dad? Ryan asked quietly. Gerald sank onto our couch, suddenly looking much older than his 67 years. I couldn't stand it anymore. What she's doing to you, to both of you, it's wrong. Why have you never stood up to her before? I asked, trying to keep accusation out of my voice. Gerald sighed heavily.
Fear, I suppose.
Fear of losing my children's respect if they knew the truth about our marriage. Fear of being alone after all these years. He looked directly at Ryan. But seeing what she's doing to you has finally given me the courage to say enough is enough. What truth about your marriage? Ryan asked. Gerald's revelation stunned us both. For 35 years, he'd been living under Martha's controlling thumb. He described a marriage where every decision, from vacations to dinner menus, was dictated by Martha's preferences. Where financial discussions were met with tears or rage. Where his role had been reduced to nodding and appeasing. She's always been obsessed with appearances, Gerald explained. The perfect house, the perfect family, the perfect Christmas. But there's something you don't know, Ryan. Something that might explain why she's so desperate to keep the house. Gerald revealed that while Martha had claimed financial hardship to justify the low rent, she'd been spending lavishly on herself for years. Designer clothes, spa weekends, expensive hobbies that never lasted. Worse, he'd recently discovered she had secretly siphoned money from Ryan's college fund years ago. That's why her scholarship didn't cover everything, Gerald said, his voice thick with shame. Why you had to take out those extra loans. She told me the market had tanked, but she'd actually withdrawn nearly $30,000 for a kitchen renovation that Howard refused to pay for. When he found out, he threatened to evict us, but she begged him to let us stay. That's when he lowered the rent even further, not as a favor, but because he felt sorry for me and for you kids. Ryan looked like he'd been physically struck. She stole from my college fund? For kitchen appliances. Gerald nodded miserably. I only found out last year when I was organizing our tax documents and found the old withdrawal slips. When I confronted her, she said it was her right as a mother to reallocate family resources as needed. After Gerald left, promising to keep in touch secretly, Ryan and I sat in silence for a long time. What do we do now? I finally asked. Ryan's expression hardened. We stopped playing her game. No more tiptoeing around to keep the peace. He squeezed my hand. We draft a new rental agreement. Fair, but formal. No more family discount. And we include documentation of the unauthorized Airbnb as leverage. Are you sure? This could permanently damage your relationship with her. She's the one who damaged our relationship. I'm just finally acknowledging it. We were working on the rental agreement when someone pounded on our door. It was Eliza. Mascara streaked down her face. How could you do this to Mom? She demanded, storming in. Today of all days? It's Christmas. Do what? Ryan asked, genuinely confused. Cut her off. Dad just called her from the airport and told her he's not coming back tonight. That he needs space. On Christmas. Eliza was nearly shouting. She's devastated. Eliza, I had nothing to do with that, Ryan said calmly. Dad came here, yes, but whatever decision he made was his own. He wouldn't have done this if you hadn't started this whole rebellion, she spat. I stepped forward. Eliza, there's a lot you don't know. Would you be willing to listen? Really listen. For the next 2 hours, we showed Eliza everything. The Airbnb listing, the credit card statements, the social media campaign Martha had orchestrated against us, and Gerald's revelations about the college fund. That can't be true, Eliza whispered when we told her about the stolen college money. Mom would never. Call Dad and ask him yourself, Ryan suggested gently. Eliza did. The confirmation from Gerald seemed to break something in her. She collapsed onto our couch, sobbing. All these years, she choked out, I've been defending her, making excuses for her behavior. Even to myself. We all have, Ryan said, sitting beside his sister. As Eliza's tears subsided, she began sharing her own stories of Martha's manipulation. How Martha had sabotaged Eliza's relationship with her college boyfriend because he was too ambitious and might take Eliza too far from home. How Martha had convinced Eliza that her ex-husband's emotional abuse was just passionate love. How Martha had subtly undermined every job opportunity that might have given Eliza true independence. I'm so tired, Eliza admitted. So tired of walking on eggshells. Of needing her approval. Of being afraid to lose her financial support. By the end of the night, the three of us had formed an unlikely alliance. With Gerald's quiet support from the inside, we would stand united against decades of manipulation and control. It won't be easy, Ryan warned. Mom's had years to perfect her tactics. But there are more of us now, I pointed out. And we have the truth on our side. As Eliza prepared to leave, she hugged me tightly.
I'm sorry, Alana.
For not seeing it sooner. For not being on your side from the beginning. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. The days after Christmas passed in a blur of preparation. While Martha maintained her public image of the aggrieved mother and wrong tenant, we worked with Thomas Wilson to draft a formal rental adjustment notice. The document was comprehensive. It outlined the lease violations, documented the unauthorized Airbnb with screenshots and income estimates, and detailed the new terms. $2,100 monthly rent, still below market but no longer a steep discount, and strict policies against any subletting. Thomas advised adding a clause requiring Martha to cease making public false statements about the ownership situation. It may be difficult to enforce, he admitted, but it puts her on notice that you're aware of her campaign against you. On December 29th, the documents were ready. I reviewed them one last time, then on impulse, took out a note card. After a moment's hesitation, I wrote, "Space in my heart is limited too. Merry Christmas." I slipped it into the envelope. Is that too petty? I asked Ryan, showing him the note. He read it and gave a grim smile. After everything she's done?
No.
Sometimes people need a taste of their own medicine to understand the hurt they've caused. We decided to deliver the documents in person on December 30th. According to Eliza, Martha and Gerald would be home preparing for their annual New Year's brunch, another elaborate event we'd been excluded from, despite having attended for the past 5 years. Eliza met us a block from the house. "Ready?" she asked, her face pale but determined. "As I'll ever be," Ryan replied. We approached the house together, a united front. I carried the envelope, Ryan carried a copy of all the documentation, and Eliza had brought along a small recording device, just in case. Martha answered the door in an apron, her face shifting from practiced hospitality to cold disdain when she saw us. "We're very busy with family matters," she said curtly, already closing the door. "If you need to communicate with us, you can use the mail like civilized people." Gerald appeared behind her. "Martha, let them in." "We're in the middle of preparations," Martha hissed. "The Thompsons will be here any minute with the floral arrangements."
Let them in.
Gerald's voice held an authority I'd never heard before. Martha stepped back, her lips a thin line of disapproval. We entered the immaculate foyer, where evidence of New Year's preparations was everywhere: fresh flowers, polished silver, stacks of fine china. I held out the envelope. "This is the new rental agreement, effective January 1st. Martha didn't take it. "We already have a rental agreement." Howard understood our situation. "Howard is dead," Ryan said bluntly. "And the lease is up for renewal." Gerald reached past Martha and took the envelope. "Thank you. We'll review it." "You don't need to review anything," Martha snapped. "We've been living here for 30 years. Nothing needs to change." Gerald ignored her and opened the envelope. As he read through the documents, the color drained from Martha's face. When he got to my handwritten note, he actually flinched. $2,000? Martha finally sputtered. "That's more than double what we're paying." "It's still below market rate," I said calmly. "And given the circumstances, I think it's more than fair." "What circumstances?" Martha's voice rose dangerously. "The unauthorized Airbnb you've been running out of the basement for starters," Ryan answered. "That's a direct violation of your lease." Martha's eyes narrowed. "You've been spying on us."
No, ma'am.
"We've been doing our due diligence as property owners," Ryan corrected. Martha turned on Gerald. "Did you know about this? This ambush?" Before Gerald could answer, Martha snatched her phone from the counter and began furiously dialing. She put it on speaker. "Susan? It's Martha. You won't believe what's happening. Ryan and that wife of his just showed up with some outrageous demands. They're trying to extort us." After all we've done for them. Aunt Susan's voice came through tinny but clear. Actually, Martha, Eliza called us yesterday. She told us everything. Martha froze. What do you mean, everything? About the Airbnb. About Ryan's college fund. About how you've been turning everyone against them with lies. Martha ended the call abruptly, her hands shaking. She tried another number. Bill, your nephew is here trying to throw us out of our home on New Year's. Can you believe? Martha. Uncle Bill's voice sounded tired. Stop. We know what's been going on. This has to end. One by one, Martha called family members, only to discover that most had already heard some version of the truth from Eliza, Gerald, or others. Her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling in real time. As her options dwindled, Martha's composure finally shattered. How dare you, she shrieked, rounding on us. All of you, conspiring behind my back, turning my own family against me. No one's conspiring, Martha, I said firmly. We're simply telling the truth. The truth. Martha laughed bitterly. The truth is that I've spent 30 years building this family, creating traditions, making memories in this house. And now you think you can just take it all away because some piece of paper says you own it. No one's taking away your memories, Ryan said. But you try to take away our dignity. You uninvited us from Christmas dinner in our own property. You lied to the entire family about us. You've been running an illegal rental operation and pocketing the money. I have done nothing wrong. Martha's voice rose to a screech. You stole from my college fund, Ryan said quietly. Dad told us everything. Martha whirled on Gerald. You told them? You betrayed me like that. For the first time in perhaps their entire marriage, Gerald stood his ground.
No, Martha.
You betrayed our son. And I betrayed him too, by staying silent all these years. Just as Martha seemed about to launch into another tirade, the doorbell rang. She froze, momentarily caught between her rage and her obsession with appearances. That'll be the Thompsons with the flowers, Gerald said mildly. Shall I get the door? Or would you like to continue this discussion where they can hear every word? Martha smoothed her apron, visibly forcing herself back into the role of perfect hostess. This isn't over, she hissed at us. But it was too late. When Gerald opened the door, it wasn't just the Thompsons with flowers. It was Aunt Susan and Uncle Bill, along with their daughter Jennifer and her husband. They'd arrived early to help with preparations for the brunch.
Oh.
You're all here already, Aunt Susan said, stepping inside before anyone could stop her. She saw us and smiled warmly. Ryan, Alana, how wonderful to see you. We've missed you so much. The look on Martha's face was indescribable, a mixture of fury, panic, and the desperate calculation of someone seeing their carefully constructed reality collapse. In that moment of confusion, I stepped forward. Martha, I understand this is difficult, but you have 3 options. Accept the new rental terms and behave as a proper tenant, move out by February 1st, or face legal action regarding the unauthorized Airbnb, which could result in significant penalties and possibly even affect your credit rating. Martha stared at me, speechless for perhaps the first time in her life. We're not trying to be vindictive, I continued, but we will no longer accept manipulation and disrespect. The arrival of Aunt Susan and the others had created an unexpected audience for our confrontation. As Martha struggled to maintain her composure, more truths spilled out. Her deliberate campaign to turn family against us, her plans to challenge the inheritance, her years of financial deceptions. I have always done what's best for this family, she insisted, but her words rang hollow in the face of the evidence. Aunt Susan put a comforting arm around Eliza. I think we all need some time to process this. Martha, Gerald, perhaps we should reschedule the brunch. Reschedule? Martha looked horrified. Everything's prepared. The caterers are coming in an hour. I think family healing is more important than brunch right now, Uncle Bill said firmly. As they prepared to leave, the dynamic had visibly shifted. Martha, once the unquestioned matriarch, stood isolated in her own foyer while the family gathered sympathetically around Ryan, Eliza, and me. We'll call you later, Jennifer told Ryan, hugging him tightly. We had no idea what was really going on. After everyone had gone, Martha disappeared upstairs without another word. Gerald walked us to the door. I'm sorry, he said softly. For everything. For not standing up to her sooner. What will you do now? Ryan asked, genuinely concerned. Gerald glanced up the stairs. I don't know. But for the first time in 35 years, I'm going to make my own decision. As we turned to leave, Gerald pulled me aside. Alana, I need to ask you something. Would there be any possibility of me renting one of the other properties in your portfolio? I think it's time I had my own space. The request caught me by surprise, but I nodded. Of course, Gerald. We'll figure something out. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me the courage to finally stand up for what's right. New Year's Eve arrived cold and clear. Instead of attending Martha's traditional brunch, which had been canceled after the confrontation, Ryan, Eliza, and I hosted a small gathering at our apartment. Gerald came, looking both nervous and relieved. He'd spent the night at a hotel after telling Martha he needed time to think. Aunt Susan and Uncle Bill joined us, along with Jennifer and her husband Mike. The apartment was crowded but warm with genuine connection. No pretense, no perfect table settings, just family being real with each other. What happens now? Aunt Susan asked as we sat around our modest dinner table. Ryan and I exchanged glances.
We've been talking about that, I said.
After everything that's happened, we could legally evict Martha. But we don't want to do that. We think living under rules she cannot manipulate will be both fair and instructive, Ryan added. Gerald nodded slowly. It might be the wake-up call she needs. Martha has never had to face real consequences before. As the evening progressed, Gerald grew more animated, sharing stories we'd never heard. About his dreams of opening a small woodworking shop, about trips he'd wanted to take but Martha had vetoed, about the person he'd been before decades of acquiescence had dulled his spirit. During a quiet moment, he cleared his throat. I have an announcement to make. We all turned to him expectantly. After 35 years of marriage, I'm filing for divorce. The silence that followed wasn't shocked so much as respectful, acknowledgement of the magnitude of his decision. Are you sure, Dad? Eliza asked gently. Gerald nodded. I've been unhappy for a very long time. Martha's controlling behavior, her financial deceptions, her treatment of you kids, it's not right. It's never been right. I just didn't have the courage to admit it. To my surprise, the family's response was supportive. Aunt Susan even admitted that she and others had long had concerns about the dynamics in Gerald and Martha's marriage. We could see how she treated you, Uncle Bill told Gerald. But we didn't feel it was our place to interfere. As midnight approached, I had an idea. Gerald, you mentioned wanting to rent one of the properties in the portfolio. There's a cottage on Maple Street. It needs some work, but it has good bones. It could be a fresh start. I couldn't afford much right now, Gerald admitted. Not until the divorce settlement. We could work something out, Ryan suggested. Maybe you could help with the renovations in exchange for reduced rent? Dad's always been good with his hands. Gerald's eyes lit up at the suggestion. I'd like that. A project to focus on. Something to make my own. We toasted the new year with champagne in mismatched glasses, a far cry from the crystal flutes Martha would have insisted upon. As the clock struck midnight, there were hugs and tears and a palpable sense of new beginnings. Over the following weeks, word spread through Martha's social circle about what had happened. The lifestyle blogger Samantha Reed canceled the home feature after learning of the situation. Several of Martha's friends from the country club stopped inviting her to events. Her carefully cultivated social status began to crumble as her true nature was revealed. Martha, never one to accept defeat gracefully, made one final desperate attempt at manipulation. On a cold January evening, Ryan's phone rang. Ryan. Martha's voice was faint, trembling. I need you to come over right away.
Eva Fallen?
I think something's wrong with my heart. Please hurry. Despite our misgivings, we rushed to the house. We found Martha sitting calmly in the living room, perfectly fine. Oh, good, you're here, she said, dropping the weakened voice. Ryan, I need to speak with you alone. Mother to son. Ryan crossed his arms. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Alana. Martha's eyes narrowed. This transparent manipulation is the last straw, Ryan told her. Until you can respect boundaries and treat my wife with dignity, our relationship will be limited to tenant/landlord interactions. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his house key, the one he'd had since childhood, and placed it on the coffee table. I won't be needing this anymore. The symbolism wasn't lost on Martha. Something in her face crumpled, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. Over the following months, Martha found herself in unfamiliar territory, facing genuine consequences for her actions. As part of the divorce proceedings, Gerald requested that they both attend therapy, both individually and as a couple. Not to save the marriage, he explained to us, but to untangle it as healthily as possible. To everyone's surprise, Martha agreed. Whether motivated by a desire to salvage her reputation or by genuine self-reflection, she began working with a therapist. According to Gerald, progress was slow and often fraught, but small signs of self-awareness began to emerge. Meanwhile, Gerald moved into the cottage on Maple Street. What began as a simple renovation project turned into a healing activity for our fractured family. Every weekend, Ryan, Eliza, and I would join Gerald to strip wallpaper, sand floors, or paint walls. Sometimes Aunt Susan brought lunch, or Jennifer and Mike came to help install new fixtures. I never knew how satisfying it could be to build something with your own hands, Eliza remarked one day as we admired a built-in bookshelf we'd just completed. As for Ryan and me, we decided to move into one of the other properties from the inheritance portfolio, a craftsman bungalow not far from Gerald's cottage. After years in our cramped apartment, the space felt luxurious, and we finally began talking seriously about starting a family. As Easter approached, we planned our first holiday gathering in our new home. No formal seating arrangements, no color-coordinated decorations, Ryan declared. Just good food and genuine connection. You know, Eliza mused as we finalized the guest list, this feels like we're creating new traditions. Ones based on inclusion rather than appearances. The gathering was everything we'd hoped. Relaxed, joyful, authentic. Gerald brought a woman named Carol, a fellow participant in his woodworking class. They weren't dating, he assured us hastily, just friends, but the way he brightened in her presence spoke volumes. The following Christmas, as we prepared for another gathering at our home, a card arrived with a familiar handwriting. Inside was a brief note for Martha. I've been doing a lot of thinking over this past year. My therapist, yes, I'm still going, has helped me see patterns in my behavior that I never recognized before. I understand now that my actions hurt you, all of you. I was so focused on creating the appearance of a perfect family that I damaged the reality of it. I know I have a long way to go, and that words are just a beginning. But I wanted to say, simply and without excuses, I'm sorry. The note ended with a tentative question. Would there be room at your Christmas table for me this year?
Just me. No expectations.
No controlling the event. Just one family member among equals. Ryan, Eliza, Gerald, and I discussed it at length. There was hesitation, of course, and wariness, but also a fragile hope. People can change, Gerald said thoughtfully, if they want it badly enough. We decided to invite her to Christmas dinner at Gerald's now-renovated cottage. When she arrived, the Martha who walked through the door was almost unrecognizable from the woman who had raged at us a year earlier. She was dressed simply, her makeup subtle, her demeanor humble. Most telling of all, she had brought a homemade apple pie, not the elaborate catered desserts she'd always insisted upon, but something she'd baked herself, imperfect but made with care. Thank you for having me, she said quietly, making eye contact with each of us. The cottage looks beautiful, Gerald. As we gathered around the table, I caught Ryan's eye across the room. We shared a private smile, acknowledging how far we'd all come. From the inheritance that had exposed long-buried family dynamics to this moment of tentative healing, it had been a journey none of us could have anticipated. The house that had once been a battleground for control was now just a house, a place where Martha lived and paid fair rent. The power it had held over our family had diminished as we discovered that home wasn't about perfect decorations or elaborate traditions. It was about authentic connections, honest conversations, and the courage to build something new from the ashes of the old. When Gerald raised his glass in a toast, his words captured the journey perfectly. To new beginnings, to houses that become homes, and to families that choose truth over appearances. As we clinked glasses, I added silently, and to finding space in our hearts for forgiveness when it's truly earned. Have you ever wondered what would hurt more, being excluded from family traditions or watching someone you love finally see the manipulation they've endured their entire life? Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who raised us. If this story resonated with you, hit like and subscribe for more tales of family drama, unexpected inheritance, and the courage to stand your ground.